Anime has never been bigger, and while there are plenty of shows out there now, you'll want to make sure you're only watching the best anime shows if you're short on time. Welcome to WatchZilla. In this list, we are going to give you our top 14 anime you can watch in a day. New shows come in thick and fast as the new seasons never really stop coming. We all love squeezing days out of our busy lives and watch never-ending 100-episode anime like Black Clover, Fairy Tail, and One Piece. But we always have an option to switch to shorter anime and finish them within the span of hours. Thanks to sites like Crunchyroll, Funimation, and even Netflix, you'd have a really hard time actually keeping on top of all of the best anime shows, let alone everything else. Every now and then a classic anime makes it onto one of those services too, so there's really more to watch than could ever be watched. This list of the best anime shows has been curated to mean that, whether you're new to the game or an old school otaku, you'll find something here you've probably not seen. Some of these animes are finished and some of them are still waiting for new seasons. Keep in mind that the Where to Watch section only applies to the US, though Netflix original productions can be watched globally, and you'll find plenty of crossover on Crunchyroll and Funimation too. Number 14. Recovery of an MMO Junkie. You might think it impossible for a great love story to be developed in a short amount of time, one that organically develops its characters and reaches a satisfying conclusion. Clearly you haven't been introduced to the master of unemployed, single, mid-life crises that is Mariko. This is a charming comedy series, but then again, Mariko's sadness and insecurity are palpable and help this story stay more grounded and not make fun of its premise too much. Many gamers take their virtual lives pretty seriously, but what if a hardworking office employee ditched her entire career in favor of getting lost in the world of MMO titles? That's what Mariko Morioka does, and she won't look back. Quitting her job and dedicating all her time to playing an MMORPG, she finds herself building a strong friendship with another player. Mariko makes some real friends via the MMO world, and they soon brighten her life in all kinds of ways. As their in-game avatars continue to interact, the stage is set for their real-life personas to meet. It's witty, it's beautiful, and illustrates just how hard it can be to be an adult. Number 13. Devilman Crybaby. At a merciful 10 episodes, in a single day you too can watch this remake of the classic demon hybrid anti-hero, which should leave you just enough time to drown your sorrows because this series is dark. It's hard to believe Devilman Crybaby only has 10 episodes. Because boy, does the action move quickly. 1 second it looks like a slice of life show with some banger rap thrown in, and in the second death is all around, and you're crying, and God might be dead. The art style is so specific, the music is funny considering it's an adaptation. You have the brutality of Akira attempting to balance his new life hunting down shape-shifting demons while trying to remain human at his core, bearing witness to the downfall of humanity as they give into mob mentality and homicidal fear, all those the horrendous death scenes, it's morbid as can be, and yet it's undoubtedly one of the best shows to come out in recent memory. Plus, it's short enough that it serves as the perfect palate cleanser. If you've got the stomach for it, it's well worth investing in. Number 12. Erased. If you ever wanted to revisit your childhood but also solve a murder mystery and potentially cry, then Erased is for you. It only has 12 episodes, but the story wraps up nicely. Although the ending is quite hit or miss. Satoru Fujinuma, a 29-year-old young man with a seemingly normal life, except for his strange ability to go back in time. This ability, which he calls revival, is not one Satoru can control, but rather one that is triggered when he finds himself on the scene of an accident. Upon discovering the brutal murder of his mother by an unknown killer, Satoru's ability sends him back 18 years in the past during a time when some of his school comrades were victims of a serial kidnapper whom he soon suspects might have something to do with his mother's death. It's a dark and twisted anime that will hook you right from the start. There's just something so interesting about bringing adult matters and an adult mind into the shoes of a child. The show really tugs at your heartstrings, but also never lets go of your attention. This is the show to binge watch in one day. It's quite heavy, but is worth a watch nevertheless. Number 11. Another. It's the best type of horror with no real jump scares, but rather just an eerie atmosphere that never really goes away. There's plenty of gore though, so maybe don't watch this one with the kids. The story started in 1972, after the death of Yamayama North Middle School's Classroom 3-3 student Misaki. Since his death, the town has been shrouded by a fearful atmosphere from the dark secrets hidden deep within. Decades later, there's a new group of students and they all seem to be unaware of the presence of their eye patch-wearing schoolmate Mei Misaki. However, when Koichi Sakakibara arrives, he begins to get closer, ignoring the other students' warnings. At the same time, he also tries to solve the gruesome phenomenon plaguing classroom. The story is pretty good as the main question of the show isn't obvious, but also doesn't come out of left field. Number 10, FLCL. The series that doesn't know the meaning of subtlety and want more than content to pack all its bombastic content into a mere 6 episodes. There are a couple ways to tackle coming-of-age stories. You can explore the conflicting emotions of teenagers and their relationships gradually, showing their growth across many methodical episodes. Or you can have your main character grow a literal horn out of his head because he's horny, represent the power of adulthood as a badass fighting robot, and use guitars as blatant symbols of sexuality. This, of course, is FLCL, a series so heavy with surreal symbolism that on a first viewing, a lot of it probably just comes across as wacky and random. It is wacky, but none of it is random. It all means something, from the moment the wild pink-haired Vespa-riding Haruko smashes tween Naota in the head with her guitar and sets off his journey through adolescence. After getting his head bashed in by guitar-wielding Galactic Enforcer on a scooter, Naota's ordinary life is thrown into chaos, namely due to the newfound presence of the wildly enchanting Haruka. And the robot's really cool, too. The robots that start to slip through his head, which has now been turned into an interdimensional gateway. From there, things only get crazier, with Haruka leading the charge every step of the way. FLCL doesn't realistically show what it's like to go through puberty, but you don't have to understand all of it to realize it brilliantly expresses what it feels like. Wild, overwhelming, confusing, sad, empowering, it's all in there. Number 9, Samurai Champloo. Director Shizuchiro Watanabe's follow-up to Cowboy Bebop is very nearly as good. It trades space for samurai-era Japan and jazz for wonderfully anachronistic hip-hop. Samurai Champloo follows the same loose structure as Cowboy Bebop, with a trio of misfits, wild Ronin Mugen, quiet and precise Ronin Jin, and chipper young girl Fu, encountering all kinds of oddball situations as they travel across the country. A young waitress named Fu uses her life turned upside down when she one day finds herself abused by a band of samurai led by the village's prefect's son. She unexpectedly receives the help of Mugen, a rogue who happened to be in the restaurant. At the same time, a lone samurai going by the name of Jin defeats the prefect's guard after witnessing injustice made against a local peasant. When Mugen and Jin are captured and sentenced to death, Fu cleverly frees them and asks for their help in finding a mystery samurai as a payment of their debt. Most episodes are standalone adventures, but Fu's central quest to find the samurai who smells of sunflowers gives it structure, popping up every so often. The characters all have their own mysteries that slowly unravel over the 26 episodes, and the action scenes are some of the most stylish samurai battles ever animated. As in all Watanabe's shows, the music really sets the tone for the show, and his use of modern hip-hop gives Champloo a wholly unique tone. Despite its seemingly serious synopsis, Samurai Champloo is a hilarious anime with a unique design that deserves more love. Number 8, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Evangelion is so monumental, so influential in the history of Japanese culture that it's worth watching no matter what. Even if you don't like mecha shows about giant fighting robots, which is what EVA is at a high level. Even if you can't stand protagonist Shinji Ikari, a depressed teenager who can't deal with his hormones, his daddy issues and the insane save-the-earth circumstances he finds himself in. Even if you're disappointed that by the end, Evangelion doesn't really know how to follow through on the mysteries, themes, and characters it's developed along the way. Commonly referred to as Evangelion or EVA, it is one of the most critically acclaimed anime in its genre, mostly due to its religious themes and imagery. The series is set in a futuristic Tokyo, 15 years after a global catastrophe. The story follows Shinji, a teenage boy who is recruited by NERV, the organization responsible for creating the EVAs, to pilot a giant bio-machine mecha called an Evangelion. The purpose of the Evangelion is to fight the monstrous beings known as angels. The series focuses on the experiences and emotions of Evangelion pilots and members of NERV as they attempt to prevent another catastrophe. There's just so much in Evangelion, it's dense with biblical imagery and psychoanalysis and what the hell moments that have inspired countless games and anime since the 90s. Number 7, Cowboy Bebop. Now here's a classic that everyone has either heard about but for some reason never watched, or put on their to-be-watched list but for some reason never did or watched and is still haunted by how good it is. The quintessential anime gateway drug. There are many reasons why you should give this classic a try, starting with the incredibly diverse and strong personalities that make the characters feel real and the surprising beautiful animation for such an old anime. The genre is as eclectic as the cast, generally it fits somewhere into the realm of a space western, but one episode it may veer off into treasure hunting, then the next into horror and the next yakuza drama. Cowboy Bebop gets silly and weird on occasion, but is overall more adult than most anime series and more subtle with its themes than Japanese writers tend to be. There's a good reason it's still beloved enough to get a live-action Netflix adaptation more than 20 years after it aired. Now is the time to dive into this world. Number 6, Ping Pong the animation. Just like in every sports anime, the sport itself is more like a tool to tell the story rather than the main focus. Most sports anime is comfortable trope-y hangout shows with a fun cast of characters that are content to trundle along for a couple hundred episodes. Ping Pong the animation, despite telling a conventional story about a pair of friends trying to become champion ping pong players, is nothing like that. You don't have to have played ping pong in order to fall in love with the show, its message, or the characters. It's a very well-written show about passion, what it means to strive for the number one spot, as well as a coming-of-age story. And it probably looks like no anime you've ever seen. Director Masaki Yuasa retained the art style of the manga by acclaimed artist Taiyo Matsumoto, characters rough and exaggerated, scenes cut up into panels just like a comic. At first it may even come off as ugly, but stick with it to see the animation blossom in expressive surreal ping pong matches that reflect the psychology of the characters as much as the real action of the sport. It has style to spare, but it's ultimately the relationship of friends Smile and Pico that makes ping pong an all-timer. After all, the ratings don't lie, this show is an absolute gem. Number 5, Death Parade. Death Parade just nails so many aspects to what makes a good show. Death Parade is a 2015 anime that continues to prove popular with new and old fans of the show. The art style is slick and the characters recognizable. People seem to absolutely adore Death Parade as soon as they watch it, and with good reason too. Basically, it's about a world where the recently deceased are teleported to a bar where they play games that will determine their final outcome. Death Parade is set in the afterlife, where people end up at one of many bars within a tower that is owned by these bartenders called arbiters. In the bar, the pairs that turn up have to take place in one of the games that the bar decides with their souls on the line. But most importantly, what will this show about their personality? The results of the games then lead them to realize how they go there in the first place and all the secrets they are holding between themselves. They also help the arbiters decide which of them gets reincarnated and which one gets sent into the void. Will they be reincarnated? Will they fade out into the void? Death Parade is an anime that you will 100% want to binge in as little time as possible because it is immediate attention grabber. It has a very interesting premise along with some incredibly layered characters that you'll want to know more about, as well as some very interesting people walking in and out of the bars. And you'll, of course, be left after each episode craving to know more about the black-haired woman and what her story is. It just has such a killer story that it's a shame it only has 12 episodes. Also, you'll fall in love with the opening song. The soundtrack is an absolute banger, and the concept of the series is brilliant. Number 4, Boccano. The narrative bounces between 3 equally important plotlines and has dozens of important characters. It's also set in America in the 1930s, so prepare to constantly forget which character belongs to which mafia family. During the early 1930s in Chicago, the transcontinental train, Flying Pussyfoot, is starting its legendary journey. Beyond just the mafia, there are also supernatural elements, like alchemy and a murderous beastie boy. Plus, some gore and even some romance. At the same time in New York, the ruthless scientist, Sillard, and his reluctant assistant, Ennis, are looking for missing bottles of the immortality elixir. On top of that, a war between the mafia groups is getting worse. The story also flashed back to 1711, where on board the Advena Avis, alchemists are about to learn the price of immortality. In an alternated version of the 1700s, a group of alchemists summons a demon in their quest to find eternal life. Although they see their wish granted, they soon learn that they are their worst enemies as they have the ability to kill one another. This dark story will take you on a journey through time following the strange lives of this group of immortals. You will love to see how the characters evolve and experience eternal life centuries after centuries, and how what should have been a gift can turn out to be a curse they can't escape. All of that is packed into just 13 episodes with a few specials on the side. And honestly, every second of watching this show is worth it. Although the stories are unrelated to each other, they intersect and cross each other as the events spiral more and more out of control. Number 3. Death Note. High school genius Light Yagami finds a peculiar notebook on the street. The Death Note, a notepad with the ability to kill people in any way you desire, and tests the Death Note's power by writing a criminal's name in it. When high school student Light Yagami discovers a book that can kill anyone whose name is written in it, he sets about creating his idea of utopia, offing high-profile criminals in an effort to eradicate crime. When the criminal dies immediately after writing his name in the Death Note, Light recognizes that a great power has fallen into his hands. With his new powers, he decides to eliminate all criminals to create a world where crime does not exist and he's considered a god. However, the police do not see Light's good intentions and hire the world's best detective, the young and unconventional man only known as L, to solve these murders. As the legend of a mystical killer of killers grows across the world, an eccentric detective known only as L sets about trying to bring him down. What follows is a fascinating game of cat and mouse as Light and L battle to discover each other's identity. Despite its fantastical concept, Death Note is an accomplished crime thriller. The convoluted rules of the Death Note itself are slowly unveiled, giving you the chance to appreciate the depths of Light's scheming. And the way L goads Lights into making mistakes, even just revealing more information than he intended, is always a delight. The second season takes a drastic dip in quality, but those first 25 episodes are masterfully constructed. Number 2. The Promised Neverland. The Promised Neverland is very suspenseful. It's hard to describe The Promised Neverland without giving away at least one of its many shocking twists, but it's the anime version of a page-turner. Every episode ends with the tension dialed to 11, and you simply have to see what happens next. It leaves you at the edge of your seat watching little children play tag. It might sound weird, but it'll make sense when you watch it. The Promised Neverland is a new anime that was broadcast only last year, set in the year 2045, centering around an orphan named Emma, who is 11 years old and lives in a self-contained orphanage with 37 other people. The orphanage treats their children well, making sure they're all well-fed, clothed, have comfortable beds and games, as well as a lot of love for their mother figure named Isabel. Emma always hangs around with her two best friends, Norman and Ray, who have a very beautiful friendship between them. They're allowed complete freedom within the orphanage, but are not allowed to venture beyond the grounds of the gates of the orphanage, which connects the house and the outside world together. When one night, an orphan called Connie gets sent away for adoption, Emma and her friends follow because Connie left behind her stuffed bunny toy, and they find out the secret of the orphanage and what they're being raised for. What briefly seems like a heartwarming story about the kids in an idyllic orphanage quickly turns into a psychological thriller as the three oldest children try to plot an escape. Again, The Promised Neverland can be anime that is really hard to watch. It takes so many twists and turns and just transitions into something completely unexpected. The characters are extremely well written, and no plot points is either obvious or nonsensical, making it the best 12-episode experience you could probably have. The Promised Neverland loves to show how smart its characters are with "I knew that you knew that I knew" one-upmanship, but hell, the cliché works when the characters are this much fun to watch together and the twists come this fast and furious. It's an anime that you will not be able to turn away from once you start watching. Watch a couple episodes and it's hard not to immediately devour the rest of the series. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Number 1. Yuri on Ice. First up, we have the very popular anime, Yuri on Ice, that premiered back in October 2016, centering around the sport of figure skating. The main character, Yuri Katsuki, is struggling a lot as he has just suffered a crushing defeat at the Grand Prix final, along with some other competition losses along the way. He's thrown into confusion about what to do when he returns to his hometown. At his home skating rink, he performs for one of his friends, a famous routine by figure skating powerhouse, Viktor Nikiforov. After the video ends up online, Viktor sees it and decides to give up skating for a year to go and coach Yuri to win the Grand Prix final. Although this causes a stir with the upcoming 15-year-old skater, Yuri Plasetsky, who follows Viktor to Japan to demand that he must keep his promise of choreographing a routine especially for him if he wins the junior championships. The two Yuris battle it out for Victor to coach them. Yuri K wins and Victor agrees to be his coach. Yuri P heads back to Russia to work and beat Yuri at the Grand Prix. Yuri on Ice is an easy-to-watch anime that will absolutely warm your heart through and through. The relationship development between, but not only, Yuri and Victor by between them and all the other skaters is worth a watch. It also has a very raw and real representation on what it's like to live with anxiety and how hard it can be to come back from, as well as it showing an on-screen LGBTQ+ relationship are just a couple of reasons the show is so loved by so many fans. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchZilla and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.